maybe. There we go. All right. So welcome back. Another 101 video on game design. So I am MICHAH'EL, Vincent Michael Donatelli. I'm here with Mr. David Winnie. He's one of our board members. He's kind of learning as we go. So we're talking about user experience right now. So UX is user experience. Okay, we'll just put in UX over here. All right. So what is user experience? User experience is it's a process on how you help the user enjoy their time with your product. It's an enjoyment factor. Okay, so we want to make sure that they're having fun, so we call it fun factor. So this was something that David and I were talking about this morning. Is let's say you get all of the stuff in your video game and it works 100% functional the way that you designed it. Just because it works the way that you designed it does not mean your clients are having fun. Okay, so you want to make sure that the fun is there. So how do you do that? Well, game balancing is essential. I would say starting there. And so when does game balancing happen? It typically happens during the quality assurance phase. All right, so as production is coming to a close, okay, so this is also known as QA, all right? As it's coming to a close, you want to test your product. But not only are you testing your product to make sure all of the functions are working the way that they're designed, but you got to make sure it's fun. Okay, so let me explain fun factor. So this was something I kind of developed last year. Is let's say there's a 0 line, all right, and we're going to use angles. So this is a 90-degree angle. Okay, so this is 90 degrees. Okay, 0 degrees. Or 180, all right? Let's just put 180 over here. Same line. All right. All right. The idea is that if this is quote-unquote fun, right, what you don't want is addiction. I do believe that this is a problematic area. All right? Addiction is a problematic area. Now, most game developers will say, no, this is what we want because this is how we're going to keep our money. Like, I kind of have a problem with that because this is teetering on endorphin addiction, and endorphins are the chemicals within the brain that that people get addicted to in terms of crack or cocaine or sex or any other type of upper. Downers too. People get addicted to alcohol. So right. So you have an addiction over here, and my goal is not to get people addicted to my games. My goal is to get people addicted to God at some point in their lives. So you can't this addiction thing. This can be anything. This could be your job. This could be your family. This could be your church. This could be your car. This could be your TV. Anything that's going to take away your relationship with God, this is an addiction quality, is not the kind of quality to have. So, so there's got to be a range. So let's say our 45-degree angles. All right. I guess that's 45 and 90. I don't remember what that math is. Just look it up real quick. 90 plus 45 is 135. So let's say this is 135. And this is 45. So this, to me, this area in here, this is what I would consider fun. All right. Something along those lines. So let's just go ahead and do a fill. Something in there. Okay. So that means we have to have a standard of engagement, right? So let's just drop the opacity on that a little bit. So standard of engagement is what is our standard? Well, our standard is going to be easy, and this is going to be difficult. And what makes something fun is a challenge. So if it's challenging, people are going to be happy. And so what we have to do is we have to find a new line. So we know that if we hit this area right here, this is what we don't want. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to make this red. This is not my target area. All right. What I might do for myself and the way that I make my games, I have a theory, and I've discussed this in my other classes before, and it's don't take offense to this, people, but I like to piss off my clients. So I'm going to try to stay over here in this region. And I do use that word in the literal sense. I do want to make my clients, to a degree, I want to make them mad. I know it kind of sounds counterintuitive, but this is the level of degree in which I like operating in. Why? Because when I was a kid, I liked being posed a challenge, and this challenge made it extremely difficult for me because I knew that I could overcome the challenge. And it's on the other side of addiction because it's to me it's in a place of almost, I wouldn't say pride. Like, I can do it, and then once I've done it, I'm moving on and I'm trying something else, or I'm going outside to go play baseball. So like, I would spend a lot of time in Street Fighter 2 on the hardest difficulty setting trying to beat Bison with Guile or Ryu, and I was only able ever to do it with Ryu, couldn't do it with Guile. So this is where my game, this is where I was with my childhood experience, but I understand that most people don't think like this. And I think that as a game designer, every person has to make their choice. And I feel professionally that most games are in this area. And I'm going to put this over here in cyan. I think that most games are over here. They're cleared functionality, but most games are actually extremely easy. Like, I feel like most games just don't provide a challenge, and they just kind of walk you through it. And to me, most Assassin's Creed games live in this area. Like, I think visually the game is amazing. Visually, they've conquered and achieved so many milestones. But functionally, as far as the gameplay is concerned, it's just too easy. And even when you put on a higher difficulty, the parry button is your go-to button. So, you know, how? Oh, and I believe that Fortnite, which is like, you know, the newest game for you for older crowd, Fortnite lies right in here. They've hired psychologists and psychiatrists to help people understand how often an endorphin hit should happen and when, and they really mastered the art of addiction right smack there. And you know, like other games that I would say that are more Asian based kind of fall between this area here. All right, so they kind of have that fun factor a little bit more fine tuned. All right, so again, kind of what needs to happen for myself is and I've been told this, especially when I game balance Starship Troopers, is don't make the game so hard that people want to give up. So my goal for myself is to try to function in this area. All right, so let's just go ahead and make this yellow. This is where I probably need to be, probably more in that area. But that's okay, you know, like I'm still growing as a game designer as well. So, you know, being over there and overshooting, give him a little bit more of a challenge, but, you know, maybe a little bit more addiction than normal. Maybe, I don't know, we'll figure it out. So let's just cut a little bit of that off. Maybe something like that. All right, so game balancing and fun factor. So let's move on to the next thing. So what else are we doing during this phase of user experience? Well, typically, it was previously known as the graphic design department. It was previously known as this, meaning that all graphics were done in this department, but they basically adapted and adopted new principles. Ideally, game flow. And I would also say design in general. The game designers were in this user experience department. So just because you have a game that goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, doesn't mean that you should portray the game A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Maybe you start the game at C, D, E, F, and then you throw some backstory in there, and then you go A, B, C, or A, B, and then go to C to bring you back up to speed. Now, who does this extremely well are Asian game designers, so specifically Japanese designers. I think that Japanese game designers are much better at understanding game flow and design than Americans are. Their stories are better, so let's put that in here. So, like, part of the fun factor is excellent writing. And unfortunately, I believe that Hollywood has blown its chance of recovery. I don't know why Hollywood sucks at writing nowadays, but I am not a fan of anything that they do. It's very rare that I appreciate much of what Hollywood brings to the table. Very rare. And I'm including Marvel in that, because Marvel comics were doing just fine until Hollywood got involved. Like, I just don't understand why Hollywood writers have to change excellent writing. Like, why would you do that? Maybe controversy is part of the plan to make people talk about your product, but I think it's a bad strategy. Like, you don't screw around with good writing. You don't. If the Bible's good and there are Bible stories that are amazing, why are you trying to make it better? That's the part that I don't understand. Okay, so let's move on. So what else happens with user experience? Well, merchandise. Okay, so maybe I'm at work and I'm thinking about Iron Man and I got an Iron Man mug. Well, that's it's a little bit of a rough call, because I think it'd be cool to have an Iron Man mug. I don't want an Iron Man logo on my cup. I want something that Tony Stark would actually use. That's the difference. I don't want Iron Man logos on my mug. I want what Tony Stark would use. Completely two different principles. What else would be considered merchandise? Hats and other paraphernalia. You have to be careful with this one, because this can easily violate the law of line extension. So one of our textbooks is the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. Okay, that's our textbook. We use that. That's one of the best small business books that you can possibly get. And law of line extension gets violated more than any other law. And typically, what's really funny is that this typically comes from board members as to why it gets violated. Always found that interesting. It's because the mentality is, our brand is so powerful, why don't we move our brand to something other than what we typically do? Coca-Cola is a really good example of that, and that's a conversation for another day. But if Coca-Cola just spends the money on producing good Coke, then they don't have to worry about line extending it to t-shirts and other stuff. You don't have to do that. Okay, so 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. All right, what else can we do with user experience? Okay, this has to do with websites. And let's do mobile games. All right, we'll multiply this against console games. And we'll multiply this against movies. Okay, if you're also going to consider this a user experience, there's another word that I like to use. It's theming. All right, that's kind of what this is boiling down to, is what is the theme of your product? All right, theming. That's what all of this is encompassing. So let's talk about theming for a minute, and let me explain to you what I mean. I personally think that in terms of theming and brand, we have to write down branding on here. Branding is extremely important. Branding has to be done in this department. It actually probably should be the very first thing that's on here. Okay, so I'm just going to put number 1, and I'll rearrange my notes at some point. That's number 1 piece of the user experience is, do you have a recognizable brand, and do people want your game? So just because you can make a game, you might need to ask the question, should you make the game that you want to make? Should you? Should you? And another question is that you should always ask yourself is this in demand? Okay? And then another question you need to ask yourself is, how do I monetize this? How do I monetize? So everybody thinks it's a good idea to make a game, but if you're doing it for experience or doing it for the sake of the art, well, then you don't have to ask these questions, right? But if you're really serious about doing this as a career, these are the questions that you have to ask regarding your own brand. Should you do it? Is this idea in demand? And how do I monetize this? If you can't answer those 3 questions, you probably shouldn't be doing this. David, do you have a suggestion on what else I can add to that list?
No, actually, I don't see your feed, your screen feed on my end.
Oh.
So I'm not right on top of it.
All right, let me try that again. Apparently, I was doing this whole time and I didn't realize that my screen share was off. Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
I just didn't want to interrupt you. That's all.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So, kind of going back over here, it probably makes a little bit more sense as to what I was saying before regarding the fun and challenging area and doing this diagram. I'm sorry, David.
Yes, I've been. Oh, that's okay. I've been taking notes right along with everything you've been.
Okay.
Just didn't see your screen share. That's all.
So yeah, after this podcast is over, I can kind of re-explain this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so going back to my question, if you're, let's say you're doing a project and you're branding, I asked 3 questions. Should you do whatever you're attempting to do? Is this idea in demand? And how do I monetize this? Is there any other questions that you can think that would go along with this that would be important?
Interesting points on branding. I guess I think of branding also is that how recognizable in the public. Is it a common, like common terminology, common knowledge, and everybody relates to it, or is it a little bit obscure and not everybody knows about it yet?
That's right. That's right. And this is a great segue into the next part of this. In branding, I absolutely agree with what David said. So what he said, for you, those of you who can hear, he said, in branding, the goal is recognition. Is your brand recognized? And the second part of it is, the enemy of every business is obscurity. This is the truth. The enemy of every business is obscurity, 100% of the time. So how do you get your brand recognized? The answer is, you have to come out of obscurity. People have to know who you are. So this is where the sales department kind of comes in. And is the sales department a part of user experience? Yes. Yes, they are. Their objective is to do twofold: to bring recognition to the business and to bring recognition to the project. That's the 2 goals of the sales department. So I'll even put them over here. Is recognition to business recognition, and then project recognition. And so the modern day salesperson is known as a marketing agent. You might also know them as PR, public relations. How does the user experience team get their brand to market? Okay, so all of this is inside of the same category. So let's depart from branding. Should have been the first thing that we talked about. Let's backtrack a little bit and tackle websites and mobile games and console games and movies. Okay, so user experience. So let's take a little travel over here to our interwebs. I've got some stuff set up so you don't have to have me go look for it. Let's discuss Iron Man for a second. So if there was one thing that Iron Man did incredibly well, aside from tell an amazing story, was that they had innovation in terms of augmented reality in film. And I thought this stuff was pretty awesome. So just looking through these different moments in different Iron Man movies, you know, aside from delivering an amazing performance, the interface or the UX, the graphic user experience and the graphic user interface, all of this is an actor that's on stage with Mr. Downey. And this stuff enhances Mr. Downey's performance because it gives him an opportunity to look at stuff. Now, we understand that he's not seeing this stuff in real time. We understand that this stuff is perfect. This stuff is something that he's acting, and then the visual performance is accentuating and accompanying his performance. Okay? So each of these widgets, a graphic designer had to sit down and design each one of these separate widgets. This is one of them from, I think this was from the second Avengers film. What was this? Age of Ultron? I think that's what this was. No, this says Mark 7 HUD. So whatever suit the Mark 7 was in, it might even have been an Iron Man 3, but this is one of the widgets that he was looking at. All right, and then I think this is the... Oh, whoops. Yeah, apparently I removed... That's all right. So anyways, you have to break down the widget. Now, you have to go find an artist that can do this. Now, this is not the artist from Iron Man. This is the artist from Oblivion. In each one of these widgets, every single one of them have animation that's applied to them. And the type of individual, a type of artist that does these things is a graphic designer. They think in a more abstract way of thought. They're way more right brain than they are left brain. Although they may understand high level mathematics, but they're basically, their life lives on a grid. And they're just trying to communicate a meter in some type of fun and new way, in an innovative way. And so all of this tech design has to come from an individual. All right? So, I mean, even something in terms of this layout for this map. I mean, this is just a piece of terrain. But, you know, it's on a grid, and it's in a grid within a grid within a grid. There's more than one grid that's being displayed in this area. And then he has little widgets that are accompanying the grid. And he has a color scheme that he's using. He's using very mute tones. He's not using saturated tones. And he's staying within a family of color. A color and composition is a part of user experience. Color, composition, and layout. Okay? So what's the point? Well, now we have to, just because you got a great graphic designer and you've got somebody who can do a really amazing Iron Man experience, you're supposed to be able to carry this tech into your website. So one of the things that I kind of fault Marvel with is there is no ironman.com. Like it's my professional opinion that every single one of these characters should have their own website. So I'm actually going to type in spiderman.com and see if it actually transfers us over to somewhere else. Let's see what happens. If there's a redirect. So far, nothing. Just maybe try www. So it looks like it's going to throw us at... No, there's something here. I don't know if my internet's being slow. There's just nothing here. Let's try ironman.com. Let me just make sure I'm connected. Okay, so I'm definitely connected. Just making sure. No, okay, so it redirected. So obviously Spiderman.com is owned, but I don't understand why it doesn't have its own website. Or why if it goes to Spiderman.com, why doesn't it give us a forwarded address of www.marvel.com/Spiderman.com or something like that, /Spiderman. I don't understand why that's not a thing. Now I've got to manually look for this. So that's bad theming to me. That's bad user experience. Now they got a lot of content, and I understand that they're probably just trying to figure this out. So okay, so we put Spider-Man in here, and now so we've got a ton of different types of Spider-Mans that we have to deal with. But I just think that when you type in /Spider-Man, well, let's just try that, see if that works. Do we actually get everything? Nope. See, that's very strange. That's bad theming to me. So, I mean, at least if you did a /Spider-Man, instead of doing a search engine where I have to manually find all of these characters, all of them should be on that front page. So this way we all know what Spider-Man you're looking for. That's really bad design to me. But there's also 465 solutions to this, so that's something they're trying to figure out. So I won't judge them too much with a heavy hand. But the theming is bad there. So let me explain to you who does great theming. So in a moment, I'm going to go through my favorite company, Square Enix. Okay, this is every logo from every Final Fantasy that they've done professionally. This is number 4. This is 5. We got 6, 7, 8, 9. You guys noticing that there's a theme going on here? The theming is that there's a branding that's absolutely recognizable. They're using the same font. And really, the only thing that's changing is perhaps the stroke that's around the text, but also the gradient in which the logo is done as well. And of course, so Final Fantasy 15, I had to keep in a Google search because apparently it's so new. Everything is on a PNG background. So when I click on it, it wants to throw it up against a black background and you don't get to see it. Oh, or not. All right, so there you go. What's my point? This company understands the point of branding and consistency. 15 products, over the course of 20 plus years. Sorry, I'm just trying to free up some RAM now. And there's just not much of a differentiation. And I can appreciate the consistency because I do believe that Final Fantasy is a very powerful brand. So, and I want to make sure that my products contain the same level of attention to detail. All right, so let's move on. So that theming should be done in your website. It should be done in your mobile game. It should be done in your console and in your movie. So that means if there's an Avengers film coming out, whatever interface is being used in the film should set the tone for the website, for the mobile game, for the console game, and for the movie. This way it's all consistent. But most people don't think that far in advance. So that's why I look at websites and games in the same light. And just to let you know, my professional opinion is websites need to move more towards an app layout than it should in terms of a mobile website layout. So if we go to any random website, let's just use Mr. Bradley over here. Let's see if his does it. Yeah, see his website, he's got all his buttons at the top. Most websites, including Yahweh Games, okay? And I actually asked for this. I wanted my banner and my buttons to be at the bottom. But apparently it was going to be a different cost to move this stuff at the bottom. I'm actually very irritated about that because I know better. Why? Because when people are holding their phone, their thumbs are at the bottom of their display. So therefore, your thumb should just reach around and just be able to touch buttons. But when you go to my website at the top, I've got everything at the top, and it's just an old, antiquated method of doing websites. People read from right to left in America, and they want to read from top to bottom. But that's not how apps are designed. They're designed for whatever your thumb can reach, and then it typically goes from bottom to top. A very interesting way of dealing with it. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing. User experience. I would imagine... Do I have writing? I know I had writing in here somewhere. Okay, excellent writing. Hollywood versus Japan or Asian in general. Okay. Something that I highly recommend is that people move away from European and American thought. One of my favorite authors, Art Katz, he says, Americans are all too American and shallow, all too shallow. And I think that broadening your perspectives in not only game design, but in life to see how other countries handle situations, you don't always have to wave the American flag. I'm a patriot just as much as everybody else is, but I'm open to, if somebody other person can do it better, why not adopt their style? I think that's what makes America America, is that you had all these different cultures come in to one place, and everybody was bringing the best of what they knew to the table. But then you know, we let other countries overtake us because of laziness. So just take a look at this at some point in your life. Look at Asian design. It's just different. Let's also look at things in terms of what makes good design. So good design, I'll just put great design. Great design comes from the biome method. So changing the topic on you. Okay, the biome method. This is a Japanese style of game design. A style and approach. Okay, so when designing a game, what you want to look at is the environment before you start with the characters. You need to know what your environment consists of. Why? Because this way you can establish food, water, clothing, shelter, and transportation. If your environment is based, or I should say, food, water, clothing, and shelter is based on the environment that you live in. If your environment does not support those 5 functions, it's going to be hard for your characters to sustain life in. So this is kind of leaving game design more into moving into character development, but it's still part of the user experience because it's a design function. Design has to live in a place. So design should live in user experience. So taking the Monster Hunter approach, all Monster Hunter gear, living conditions, and transportation is based on the environment that they live in. So, for example, if I was an Eskimo who lived in the Arctic North, if I wore exactly what I wear in the Arctic North at the equator, I would die. And whatever I would wear at the equator going into the Arctic North, I would die. Food, water, clothing, and shelter is depending on your biome and your environment, your environmental conditions. Okay, so let's move on. What else can I talk about in this area? Part of your branding. I know I'm jumping around a little bit too much here, so let's just do branding too. I'll reorganize this later. Right? What does branding consist of? So it's your logo, your letterhead, it is your representation, it is your company policy, it's your bylaws, Actually, let's put them together. Company policy and bylaws. It is your attitude. It is your level of commitment. It is your spiritual condition. It is your morality and ethics. It is your print media. Because this is your image. Branding is also considered your image. Okay? In Hebrew, it's called Salem. Let me write that word down. Salem. Salem is image. Now, in Genesis chapter 1, on the first chapter, it says, "Let us create man in our image and likeness." The word is Salem ve demut. So it's image and likeness. So whose image and likeness are you bringing forward in your company branding? I think that's a question that every business owner should ask themselves, is whose image and likeness are you bringing forward? And do you have the moral integrity and the ethics and the values that should be brought forward into the industry? I've pretty much covered everything that I can possibly think of under user experience. Does all of this user experience make it fun for your consumer? If your consumer is going to like your user experience, they will probably be fans of yours for all time and times to come. They'll support you even if you put out a bad product, because they know at some point that you have the potential to make greatness. So come out of obscurity by getting your brand recognized and stand for something. I think that's the best advice I can give you. David, you got anything else that you want to add to this? You think I've kind of covered most of it? Hope I didn't lose him.
Oh, nope.
Okay.
I said I think that's an excellent coverage. Sorry, I had it muted so I wouldn't disturb what you're saying.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I think that's it for user experience. And I think we'll be back with another video at another time with programming stuff. I think that's important in addressing for game design. So talk to you guys soon. Shalom.